Let me tell you guys, the time it takes between their liberal BS and them being proven wrong is getting shorter and shorter. I mean, it was just a few weeks ago when every Tom, Dick, and Harry on liberal media brought on every economist that they could find to say that Trump's tariffs were going to cause inflation in the U.S. Then the latest inflation report came in and it was way softer than expected, even taking us all the way back to 2021 to find a similar drop. The consumer price index rose 2.3% in April from a year earlier, below March's 2.4% annual increase, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So according to President Trump, no inflation and prices of gasoline, energy, groceries, and practically everything else are down. The only thing that's stopping us is Fed Chair Jerome Powell and his stubbornness to keep interest rates where they are. Trump wrote on Truth Social, the Fed must lower the rate like Europe and China have done. What's wrong with too late Powell, right? He added that Jerome Powell's refusal to cut rates was not fair to America, which is ready to blossom. So he's saying, just let it all happen. It will be a beautiful thing. Meanwhile, liberal media is doing all sorts of mental gymnastics to explain away the good news. They say companies stocked up on inventory before tariffs. That's why prices are down. MSNBC even wants to thank Joe Biden and says that this is still the effect of Joe Biden's administration. So yeah, right. So then, of course, there's Jerome Powell himself still warning about inflation from Trump's tariffs. Really? It's empty fear mongering at this point, and everybody knows it. I guess they're really just praying for a recession now in order to save their party. I mean, a former spokesperson for former President Joe Biden even joined forces with other anti-Trump individuals to form a new group that they say would draw negative attention to Trump's economy. Andrew Bates. So this guy is a former Biden spokesperson who kept blaming Joe Biden's economy on every other factor on earth except for Joe Biden's policies. So yeah, not a real big surprise that he's joining as a communications advisor for the Cost Coalition, which is a group that will advise or will use advertisements, social media, news interviews, and even events to push negative messaging on Trump's economy. And yes, but yeah, you don't see me over here sweating because we all know the truth, right? Inflation's getting better and soon America's going to be doing great again. Hoover Institution senior fellow Victor Hanson even predicted that President Donald Trump's negotiations with China and other policies could bring a real economic boom to the U.S., or as Trump put it, a golden age for America. I mean, really, it's just too bad Jerome Powell refuses to see that. But here's something else. Republican Utah Senator Mike Lee and Kentucky Representative Thomas Massie, they're planning to reintroduce a bill to abolish the Federal Reserve. That's right, guys, meaning President Donald Trump could soon be in charge of the agency and when to cut rates. Now, that would supercharge the economy for sure. Now, I can't wait to see that. More details on that a little bit later in today's video, but stay right there, guys. And if you appreciate the daily news updates, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. You've worked your whole life, guys. You deserve a Medicare plan that works for you, not one that drains your wallet. That's exactly why Chapter exists. They're not tied to a few plans. They review every option to save you money, to keep your doctors, and to maximize your benefits. The average senior is saving about $1,100 per year with Chapter. Chapter was founded by people who refused to let their own parents get ripped off. And now they're helping families everywhere. It's totally free. There's no cost. There's no pressure. Just real help. Give our friends over at Chapter a call. Their phone number is 909-563-8279, or you can hit them up on the web at askchapter.org/Ron and get the help that you deserve. Okay, so first, we really got to check out how mainstream media is trying to explain this drop in inflation. It's so funny, actually. But let me tell you guys, they're doing all sorts of mental gymnastics just trying to explain this away. It'd be funny if it weren't so pathetic. But here, check this out.
The latest government data shows inflation cooling off slightly last month, coming in at 2.3% for April. That is better than expected, the lowest it's been since February 2021. President Trump weighed in on the report on social media and again urged Fed Chair Jerome Powell to lower interest rates. With me now, Justin Wilfer is a professor of economics and public policy at the University of Michigan, and Max Chafkin, Bloomberg Businessweek journalist and co-host of the podcast Elon Inc. It is good to see you both. Max, talk me through these inflation numbers.
Well, it's obviously good news that inflation is starting to come down after years of the Fed struggling to deal with it. And also potentially positive news around the tariffs because, there had been this expectation that companies were going to raise prices. The thing is, we don't know that we've actually seen the effect of the tariffs yet. A lot of companies, a lot of big companies spent the months ahead of, the so-called Liberation Day by importing as much as they could, right? So they were filling up their inventories with goods ahead of the tariffs, and the sense is, that the inflation may pick up as a result of the tariffs, even with this effort to, the compromise with China or whatever is going on with the Trump administration.
So what did I tell you guys? Those mental gymnastics are on a whole nother level, guys. I mean, when you are that mad and our economy is doing well, then you've lost the plot. I mean, I say maybe even move to another country, Now, let me show you the same story from a more sane, balanced perspective. Here, check this one out.
Inflation has dipped to its lowest level in the U.S. in 4 years. This comes despite predictions of higher overall prices because of President Trump's tariff agenda. Edward Lawrence of Fox Business joins us now from the White House with the latest on this. Good evening, Edward.
Good evening, Brett. And with top U.S. CEOs in tow, like NVIDIA and BlackRock CEOs, President Trump made it clear his tariff policy will continue.
The money is pouring in, the jobs are pouring in, the companies are pouring into our country like we've never seen before. There's never been anything like it. And we let other people tariff us into losing a lot of money and a lot of jobs, and now we're tariffing them.
So far, prices this year have come down or increased less than the first 4 months of the Biden administration. Overall inflation increased 0.4% this year. When President Biden started his policies, all prices rose 1.5% in his first 4 years. Food is up less under President Trump. Energy fell more than 1.5% this year. It rose 7.6% in the first 4 months under President Biden. Egg prices, everybody talks about this year, up 2.2%. Under President Biden, up 3.6% in the first 4 months. Now, in D.C., the Commerce Department held its annual Select USA conference to attract more investment. We asked the ARM's CEO about tariffs moving businesses back.
And is that one of the reasons you have a bigger footprint here, because you're anticipating some of the manufacturing to come back?
I think it's a mechanism to start a process. I think tariffs will ultimately be a tool to move some of that back in the United States. Not all of it, because the supply chain is so complicated. But I am a believer, and I don't say this just because I'm a U.S. citizen, that it's the right thing for this country to have more of that move back to the United States, just simply because of supply chain resiliency.
And so far, the data is not showing the price increases that some, like the Federal Reserve Chairman, predicted would come with tariffs. Brett?
Edward Lawrence, live on the North Lawn.
Now, once again, the media and folks like Jerome Powell, they're getting exposed for being completely wrong about inflation. U.S. inflation slows unexpectedly to 2.3% in April. Yes, unexpectedly, but only if you've been listening to the people who've been wrong this entire time. The Consumer Price Index rose 2.3% in April from a year earlier, below March's 2.4% annual increase. And yet, somehow, we're still pretending like Trump's economic policies are a threat. Here's the thing. Trump sees what's actually happening. The data is cooling, prices are coming down, and instead of celebrating that, Jerome Powell's dragging his feet like it's still 2022. Meanwhile, Trump's out here saying, hey, no, there's no inflation, and prices of gasoline, energy, groceries, and practically everything else are down. And you know what? He's not wrong. Food prices down 0.1%, eggs down 1.6%, used cars also down. There's no fluke here. The trends are trending, and inflation, well, it's not inflating. And yet the Fed won't cut interest rates. Why? Is it politics? Plain and simple, guys. Trump called him out. What is wrong with too late, Powell? And honestly, that line is probably going to age like fine wine. While Jerome Powell's worried about stagflation that's nowhere to be seen, the real economy is doing fine. The U.S. added 177,000 jobs in April, way better than expected. People are working, inflation is easing, and the market holding steady. Even analysts are admitting it. The April CPI report suggests that inflationary pressures in the U.S. economy remain moderate and relatively well maintained, says Peter C. Earle, the director of economics and economic freedom at the American Institute for Economic Research. So what's the excuse now? Well, here's the deal. This isn't about whether you like Trump or not. It's about facts, and the numbers don't lie, but the spin sure does. And the media wants you to think that things are far worse than they actually are because they just can't stand that Trump might have actually been right. So yeah, maybe it's time to stop pretending that the sky is falling and start admitting that the economy under Trump is actually okay. okay? I mean, it's doing better than they want you to believe. I'll say that much. Now, I mean, like, what if I told you we were on the edge of an economic boom and the only people trying to convince you otherwise are Biden supporters and the media? Yeah, let's think about that for a second, right? But first, real quick, if you guys are into cutting through the noise and getting the facts straight about our economy and our country, please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Really does help us out a lot here. It definitely helps more than you even realize. It keeps me being able to bring the news and the content that you guys want to hear. Now, speaking of, let's get back to that right now. Now, all right, so here's what's really going on. Fear mongering is what it's called. And Jerome Powell and people who used to work for Joe Biden, they're behind it. Here, watch this.
Well, if you look at the bottom right of your screen, you'll see that the markets are selling off more than they were before Fed Chair Jerome Powell began warning that larger than expected tariffs likely mean higher inflation and slower growth. Dagan, why is it that we hear all this policy criticism from Powell now, and we didn't hear much of it when Biden was spending money like a drunken sailor, right? I mean, it does seem like he is kind of calling favorites, no?
He is a political animal. We saw what he did right before the election with 3 interest rate cuts, what was the reaction then? He was cutting rates and longer-term interest rates shot up on the 10-year because he was fomenting inflation, not fighting it. So now he is attributing the effort by President Trump to reorder our trading world as being inflationary. One trader just sent out a message saying Powell is balking. And here were the headlines. Can't have strong labor market without price stability. May find ourselves in scenario with mandates in tension. One versus the other, strong labor market versus the price stability. The Fed's obligated to keep inflation expectations anchored and economic impact of tariffs likely larger than expected. So if you're waiting for rate cuts, you're going to wait a lot longer.
Larry.
But see here, instead of the doom and gloom Jerome Powell just indulges in, we're actually seeing early signs of something nobody in mainstream media wants to talk about, a real economic boom that could be bigger than expected. I mean, inflation's cooling off. The U.S. added 177,000 non-farm payroll jobs in April, which is solid. And Trump's moves on tariffs and trade they're already forcing countries like China to back down and come to the negotiating table. So now you would think that would be great news, right? But instead, here comes the spin machines. You got Biden supporters and former administration followers. They're already organizing a full-blown campaign to trash the economy before it even takes off. No joke. A former spokesperson for former President Joe Biden, known for defending the administration's unpopular economy, is joining forces with other anti-Trumpers to form a new group to basically draw negative attention to Trump's economy. It's called the Cost Coalition. And yes, it's as manufactured and political as it sounds. Andrew Bates, the same guy who stood behind Biden's economic chaos while inflation peaked at 9.1% in June 2022, is now trying to rewrite the story before the data even settles. So he's out here claiming, with a straight face, mind you, that Biden handed the Trump administration the best performing economy in the world. I mean, that's just full-on gaslighting at this point. This guy defended Biden's grocery store nightmares, sky-high gas prices, even blamed energy costs on global problems while ignoring the very real fact that Joe Biden cracked down on domestic oil and gas. But now, suddenly, he and his crew are worried about prices under Trump. Give me a break. I mean, just listen to Hoover Institution senior fellow Victor Davis Hanson talking about the real economic boom that's coming and liberals just hoping for a recession to save their behinds. Here, watch.
Donald Trump is trying to do is to lower the amount of foreign capital and exchange they have at their disposal and save American jobs. So if he gets this $1.2 trillion surplus down to 500 million, and that sounds to me like he might be able to do that, cut it in half without destroying and then wean us off slowly of Chinese dependence. It's a fantastic boon. And you know what's so weird about it, Jack, is that every economist that I know of has been warning us, whether it was Warren Buffett in Forbes magazine 20 years ago, whether it was the Obama economic advisor Jason Furman, whether it was Charles Munger, that it was nonsense. It was not sustainable to be running these huge trade deficits. That they said it, not Donald Trump. He was influenced by people like them. No other president has really addressed it. No other president's talked about the trade deficit. Nobody's talked about the budget deficit, not since Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich balanced it, the budget deficit. Nobody's talking about the national debt. Biden, I never heard Biden, did you ever hear him say one word that we're paying $3 billion a day in interest? I didn't. So he's trying to address that, and Wall Street was so influenced by the left-wing media and the investor 8% of the population that owns, 90% of the market capitalization on Wall Street, but they didn't look at the real indicators. So you look at jobs. Jobs had a phenomenal growth. They were, for 2 months in a row, they defied expectations on jobs. They defied expectations on inflation. They defied expectations on corporate profits. There was movement on cutting the budget deficit, which Wall Street likes. It looks like for all of the Republican, mutinies, divisiveness, they're going to get a bill that markedly deregulates and keeps the tax cuts. So all the news was good, and then they got the trade that the elephant in the room is China. And if they can make movement, then South Korea is next, and then Japan, and then Taiwan, and then Singapore. They'll all fall in place. The last people to do it will be their so-called friends that we protect, and those will be the Europeans. They will be the most unhappy if Donald Trump is successful. Maybe rivaled by the American left that's just openly now hoping for a recession. But it's amazing. I went back, Jack, today and looked at some of the things the Wall Street Journal had been writing during the Judgment Day in March, when the stock market went down.
I'm telling you guys, those drops in inflation are going to become more obvious in the months to come. And it's only going to get harder and harder for liberal media to deny it. You heard Hanson. The left is openly hoping for a recession. Why? Because they know that if the boom becomes real, the 2021 horror story that they said about Trump just crumbles all around them. Hanson pointed to real numbers. Inflation down, job growth steady, foreign investment on the table, even energy production ramping back up. Now, if Trump's policies keep moving in this direction, we may see something that Washington hasn't been able to deliver in years, actual widespread economic growth without runaway inflation. But of course, if you're watching CNN or you're reading headlines from those coalitions, you'll think that the sky is falling. It's not. They're just mad that it's falling in Trump's favor. And just when you think the resistance to progress couldn't get any more obvious, here comes the Federal Reserve again, standing in the way. The Federal Reserve announced Wednesday in its third meeting of 2025 that it would continue to hold interest rates steady. That is despite inflation slowing faster than expected and job growth beating projections. The consumer price index decreased 0.1% in March, and the producer price index fell 0.4%. Now, those are clear signals that inflation is cooling. So why is the Fed still holding off? Well, Jerome Powell says he's well positioned to wait for greater clarity. I mean, how clearer can you get? The numbers are right in front of him. Inflation's down, jobs are up, and Trump's economic policies, they're starting to gain traction. But instead of adapting, the Fed's digging in. And Trump, he's had enough. He's calling out the Fed hard, saying that they're too late and wrong. He even posted that Jerome Powell's termination cannot come fast enough. Now, here's where things get real interesting. Republicans are done playing nice. Senator Mike Lee and Representative Thomas Massie just reintroduced legislation to abolish the Federal Reserve entirely. Yeah, you heard that right, guys. This bill would dissolve the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System and each Federal Reserve Bank within 1 year. This is big. This isn't another complaint about interest rates. This is about taking away power from unelected bureaucrats and putting it back where it belongs, in the hands of leaders who are actually accountable to voters. Thomas Massie says it clearly. Americans have suffered under crippling inflation, and the Federal Reserve is to blame. And Lee adds that the Fed has become an economic manipulator and that we need to end the monetization of federal debt. Even Elon Musk has backed this idea. Why? Because more and more people are realizing that the Fed's so-called independence is just a shield for inaction, and in this case, obstruction. Trump's out here trying to reboot the economy, fix trade imbalances, and bring back energy independence. But Jerome Powell's too busy waiting for quote-unquote clarity while the rest of us are watching it play out in real time. So now, we're at a crossroads. The Fed can either get out the way or it can get replaced. Now, this isn't just about rates anymore. It's about who really controls the future of American economy. And for once, it actually looks like that control might be shifting right on back to the people and away from the central bank that's been wrong more often than not. So let me ask you guys, should Trump have more control over the Fed? Drop a quick yes or no in the comments, guys. I want to hear what you think. And if you want to keep going down this rabbit hole with me, check out the videos that I've got lined up for you guys about to pop up here in a second. As always, thank you for hitting the like button and subscribing. We'll see you next time.